Your period is truly a report card of your health every single month. Heavy periods and debilitating cramps are not normal. They are common, they are not normal. You are not being dramatic. It is not part of being a woman. It is not something that you're destined to struggle with. Let's dive into today's episode. So, we're going to be talking about what is and isn't normal for periods because we just are not taught what is normal for periods. I feel like having a period is very taboo. It's getting better, but it's still, I think the only time we talk about periods is when it's like bad, right? Of like, oh, I'm on my period, so I'm just like eating a whole pan of brownies, or oh, I'm on my period, like that's why I'm so like spicy and testy. Or I snapped at my child because I'm on my period, or I'm just so tired, like I can't, I'm literally like dead to the world the week before my period. I feel like we normalize having bad periods, and as women, we almost like connect on that. And I think it's important to have that connection, but I also want to flip the script and make it so that even though it's something we're talking about, we have more and more women speaking up and getting the support they need and spreading the word that even though these symptoms are common, they aren't normal and we aren't destined to suffer just because it's just part of being a woman. So, the purpose of today's episode is to uncover what is and isn't normal for periods. And of course, no one woman's cycle is going to look the exact same, of course. And my big goal is to really unearth and educate you on, if you have just been told this is part of being a woman or just go on birth control to stop XYZ symptom, there is a deeper root cause and it's not normal to feel awful 1 or 2 weeks of the month. Like we have to figure out what's going on that doctors don't test for, they don't look for, they don't talk about, so that this conversation around periods isn't just like, ugh, my period. And one of the things, I was talking to a potential client the other day, and she was telling me how she was put on birth control to quote unquote make her uterine lining thinner, which is interesting to me. And she was also telling me, because she was asking, do you just work with women who are wanting to come off birth control? And I said, no, not necessarily. Well, that's who I primarily, do work with, and that's my specialty. I also do work with women who are not on birth control and just need support and, functional testing and individualized plans to balance their hormones naturally, whether that be post-pill acne, symptoms after coming off birth control. That's still 100% in my wheelhouse and my specialties. We were kind of talking about that, and she said, okay, because I don't mind not having my period every single month. It's really nice. And whenever someone says that, it just makes me cringe a little bit because your period is truly a report card of your health every single month. And if you're missing your period, if your cycle is longer, or if you're bleeding more heavily, if you're having debilitating cramps, if you're having crazy mood swings, that's a good sign that something deeper is going on. And that's a symptom of a deeper imbalance, right? I talk about that a lot with acne, of like, acne is not the problem itself. It's a symptom of something deeper going on, whether it's gut imbalances, low minerals, stress, hormone imbalances, the list goes on and on and on. And to put this into perspective, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists declare that your period is your fifth vital sign. So that means it's just as important as blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, and respiratory rate. So this is a big deal. It's a big sign whether your body is healthy or not. And if you are on birth control, you're not having a true period, because as a reminder, birth control shuts down your body's natural ability to make its own hormones. So you're not having those natural ebbs and flows in your cycle because your hormones are shut down. It's like this flat line. So they kind of resemble like a man's hormones, where it's like they're just the same throughout the month, versus women's, they have natural ebbs and flows, which I call our superpower. That's what makes us more, vibrant and energized and ready to crush it at the gym and do all the socialization one week. And then it makes us more introverted and more, self aware and more creative the next week. So, a healthy regular period is a reflection of what's happening inside your body. It gives us critical insight into the state of your hormone balance, your metabolism, your stress levels, your nutrient status, and even your gut health. So when your period is, missing, painful, irregular, overly heavy, etc., it's something to really take into consideration, not just one of those inconvenient things or things where it's like, oh, I'm going to be on my period. It's your body waving a red flag asking for your support. And the more we tune in, the more empowered we actually become to heal. But unfortunately, the conventional medical space is very much like, oh, well, that's just part of being a woman, like take birth control to like make it go away. But the problem with that is, again, it doesn't actually fix the true problem. And a lot of times it makes things worse behind the scenes because of how birth control works, depleting minerals, imbalancing your gut, causing widespread inflammation, impacting your brain. And so when women decide to stop, then those symptoms come back, and they oftentimes come back worse than before because the root cause wasn't truly addressed. And we were just adding fuel to the fire, one, with time not addressing that root cause, and two, with those negative impacts of birth control. Let's talk about what is normal first. Let's start with the positive. So, on average, your cycle length, and this is if you're off birth control, remember this. So, you're not having a true period if you're on birth control. You can still very much listen to this episode, because if you are on birth control and you're still experiencing symptoms, we're going to talk about root causes with that too. And when I'm saying like what's normal for a period, this is a real period where you're ovulating, you're having those natural ebbs and flows in your hormones throughout the month. You are not having artificial hormones in your body. Okay. So, cycle length for a period is on average, what is considered optimal is 25 to 35 days, is like the functional range. But it should be consistent for you. So, one of the things that I hear a lot of women say is like, oh, well, it's not 28 days. Well, 28 days, it's like saying everyone needs 2,000 calories, right? Like, just because that's what the food label on like food products says, and that's what the nutrition is based off of. They just had to choose an arbitrary number to put on labels to base that nutrition information off of. That doesn't mean that every single person needs 2,000 calories per day. Some people need more, some people need less. It really just depends, and that's where having individualization is important. So for you, you might have 24-day cycles. For other people, it might be closer to like 30. It has to be consistent for you. And so if one month it's 20 days, the other month it's, 40 days, or all of a sudden, you're usually on a consistent 25-day cycle, and then all of a sudden it goes to, let's say, like stretching out to 50 days or whatever, like consistently. And then that's where we really need to pause and say, what's going on here? So it isn't a place to judge, it's a place to pause and reflect and to get curious. So cycle length anywhere from 24 to 35 days, but the most important thing, it being consistent for you. Period length, typically anywhere from 3 to 7 days of actual menstruation, actual bleeding is what is normal. Anything less than 3 days could be signs of possible low estrogen and or low progesterone. And if your cycle is greater than, not cycle, your bleeding is greater than 7 days, this might mean you didn't ovulate, aka you had an anovulatory cycle, which means that you're shedding your uterine lining, but you're not actually ovulating. So no progesterone, no thickened uterine lining equals a longer, heavier bleed. And this was something that I learned early on in my hormone journey, is I thought if you were bleeding, you were having a period off birth control. I mean, I thought you were having a period on birth control. That's why I was put on birth control. But then once I, learned that, I was like, okay, like great. Like I got my cycle after stopping birth control right away. Cool. Like I'm good in that area. My skin was freaking out. My anxiety was bad, but I was like, okay, my period's good. But then I did some functional testing and I found out that my progesterone was it was like tanked. It was very low. And this can be common after coming off birth control. And with my history of under eating, over exercising, etc. So even though I was bleeding, I wasn't actually ovulating. I was having an anovulatory cycle. So this is why I'm very loud about having women know how to track ovulation. We can't just go off of an app on your phone of like, oh, like you're going to ovulate, you're going to have a period XYZ date. It might tell you when you're going to shed your uterine lining, but it's not going to tell you when you are actually ovulating and if you are ovulating. So we need to have more internal data points compared to just looking at an app. So this, for example, is the fertility awareness method. And I have a whole podcast episode about that in the books. So you can go back. It's with Vicky Shahadi. We dive deep into fertility awareness method, but this is measuring your temperature, your cervical mucus. You can also do your uterine placement as well, but it's really diving into signs that your body is ovulating. So that's really, really important. We can't just go off of whether you're bleeding or not. I worked with so many women who are having anovulatory cycles, but they think that they're having a period. Moving on to blood color. So a healthy blood color is bright cranberry red. If it is like purple or dark red, that could be a sign of high estrogen or like a really thick uterine lining. Gray is potential infection. So seek medical attention for that. Or if it has like an abnormal, like fishy smell, definitely seek medical attention for that. If it's lighter, like a light pink or orange, this could signify low estrogen, low hormones in general from like under eating, stress. So especially if you're like spotting, pay attention to that. And then brown/black. This could be like slow shedding, hormonal birth control, low progesterone. I will also say too, like at the beginning of your period and then at the end, I personally, there might be people who disagree with me, but I personally don't think that's abnormal to have some like brown. If it's black, I would say that's something to look into, but a little bit of brown before and after your cycle or beginning and end rather, I would say that's normal because that's just your body like shedding, it's old uterine lining that's being shed. So I had a client recently who she was like saying she thought she was spotting right after her period. And I was like, okay, well, when was that? And she said it was like the day after I stopped bleeding. And I said, what color was it? And she was like, it was like brown. And I was like, okay, I think that's just your body, like your vaginal cavity, like clearing the excess uterine lining. I don't think that's anything to worry about. I wouldn't consider that spotting. Okay. But if it's consistently only brown or black, that's when we want to investigate more. Energy. It's 100% normal to have energy and mood shifts throughout the month. But if they are, we'll talk about this with what's abnormal, but to preface, if they are like you are dead to the world, you are a like absolute bitch without reason, excessively, you're not yourself and you're not yourself, that is not normal. Okay. But what is normal is let's do a little highlight of each phase of your menstrual cycle. Okay. So, phase one, approximately, I'm just going to give approximations here. Everyone's length is different with their cycle, but approximately day 1 through 5 is your menstrual phase. And this is when people are more likely to need more rest. Their hormones or our hormones are at our lowest. Energy is lower and mood just may be more sensitive. It's really a time to slow down, to do some like self-reflection, not push yourself. You're probably not going to feel like socializing very much. So really just rest, reflect, reset during your menstrual phase and be okay with that. This is where, we live in a hustle culture where we feel like, and our society is built off this 24-hour clock. It's built off a male cycle, a male hormone cycle, which it's every 24 hours, it resets, versus ours is every, 28-ish days. So we should not be expecting ourselves to operate on a 24-hour cycle. There are going to be weeks where we are slower moving. There are going to be weeks when we're ready to kill it in the gym. It really listen to your body and start noting these things. I personally do not, I'm aware of these things, but I don't, at this point in time, like that would be cool if I could cycle sync my entire life. At this point in time, it's not realistic for me, but I definitely listen to my body and I make note. Like, for example, I can tell I'm going to start my period soon. Like this past week, I just felt so tired, like, but not to the point where I couldn't function. It was like pretty much like at the end of the day, I was like, okay, like I'm ready for bed. And my head hit the pillow and I was like out like a light. Or I was in my sauna listening to a business podcast. And it was one of those things where her podcast is like an hour episode. So it's like a pretty big chunk of time. So I knew that I didn't have to be kind of like on alert, being like, oh, is this going to end? Do I need to switch podcasts? So I was like literally listening and I kind of like lulled off and I like almost fell asleep in my sauna. And that happened my last luteal phase too, where I was in the sauna listening to her podcast and I like kind of fell asleep. I didn't fall asleep. I almost did. And, I wouldn't have burned to death or anything like that. Like my sauna turns off after a time, but that's just an example. So I just like am aware of those things. And like, for example, like also last week, I was just hungrier than normal. In your luteal phase, and your menstrual phase, you need more energy. You need approximately anywhere from like 100 to 300 more calories as your hormones are fluctuating, as your body is preparing to have its period. So I recognized that and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't judge it. I didn't try to restrict myself and be like, oh, like that's too much. That's not normal. Like isn't normally how I eat. I'm like, okay, I must be in my luteal phase. Like I must be gearing up. And like, sure enough, this morning I woke up, I had some cramping. So I can tell today or tomorrow I'm going to start my period. If you can structure your life based on your cycle, more power to you. I think that's great if you want to do that. But I'm more about flexible cycle syncing versus hard, fast rules personally. Moving on. So you have your menstrual phase, the first 1 to 5 days, rest, reflect, reset. Next is your follicular phase. So this is approximately days 6 to 13. This is when your energy levels start to rise, you're more focused, kind of like a fresh start, estrogen starts climbing, and you have more creativity. This is ideal time for planning, starting new projects, and trying new workouts. Just more creative and getting more energy then. Ovulatory phase. This can vary. We often hear like day 14, but anywhere from like 14 to 17ish, you're social, confident, magnetic, you're feeling more sexy. Your partner might find you more sexy because of the pheromones you're releasing, kind of interesting. This also was something I noticed this past cycle. We were in Boston on our trip and I I forget like when it was or what happened, but like we were just in like the hotel room getting ready. We had traveled with my parents. Um, and Jared and I were like getting ready for the day or something. And he put on like a backwards hat and I was like, ooh, that's like so sexy. Versus other times I'd be like, okay, like let's go. You know what I mean? So I just noticed I had like more of a sex drive and I was like, oh, like I'm noticing him more. He looks more attractive to me today. So that is something in your ovulatory phase. And this is when you're more likely to become pregnant if you're not on birth control as well. So this is where if you're on birth control, you're not ovulating. And so you're not having a true period. Just for example, this main event of ovulation is not happening. If you're tracking your cycle to get pregnant, this is what you're tracking. I mean, you're tracking your whole cycle, but you're specifically tracking your ovulatory window because that's when you're most likely to conceive. All right. And then last but not least, luteal phase. This is the week before your period. So approximately 17 to 28. So your ovulatory phase is pretty short and sweet. Then we have your luteal phase. This is when progesterone rises, energy slowly starts to dip, and mood starts to fluctuate. So focusing on nourishing yourself. Again, you might be hungrier during this time, gentle movement, kind of winding down in preparation for your cycle, and just honoring these natural shifts instead of fighting them. So again, this is something to just be aware of. I say this just for information and to start being curious about these things. And I don't want to demonize like the luteal phase or demonize the menstrual phase. I think a lot of times people are so like, yay, I'm ovulating, like, which like, yeah, celebrate that wholeheartedly. And everyone's going to vary with this too. So for example, with like the luteal phase, I noticed personally, I've seen this consistently over time. I tend to right before my period, right at the end of my luteal phase, I tend to have this like surge in energy. It's almost like my body is like preparing for my period of like, okay, get shit done now because then you're going to be more tired, you're going to be less motivated, all normal. But it's like I have this surge of like, get shit done, work out, like I have more energy. And then it's followed by like, okay, I'm falling asleep in my sauna. But other people, they don't have that. It's like more of a steady decline down of like energy and stuff throughout that in their menstrual cycle or their menstrual phase. So be flexible. Just start noticing these things. I do have I'll attach this in the show notes, but if you're interested more in diving deeper into cycle syncing, I have a cycle syncing your nutrition ebook, and it has lots of recipes that you can plug and play for different times of your cycle based on like what nutrients you need more of. I give a little bit more in-depth information about each phase, and it gives you lots of really good tips and tricks for, foods to balance your hormones. Honestly, I think the best, there's one page in there that I think makes it worth it in and of itself is it has each phase and every single category of food. So like what vegetables to focus on, what fruits, what nuts, what proteins, things like that. So honestly, you can take that and plug it in Chat GPT and be like, make me three dinner recipes or breakfast recipes for this week using these foods from the luteal section. Just make meal planning easier, but make it flexible. It doesn't mean that those are the only foods you have to consume during each phase, but it's strategically designed so that you can nourish your body based on where you're at in your cycle with what it needs most to feel supported. Let's talk about what isn't common. What is not normal, but way too common. What is not normal for a period, but is normalized by our conventional health system. Debilitating cramps, missing work, vomiting, passing out. No, not okay, not normal. Way too many women are gaslit into saying like it's all in your head. There's so much research on that, so much research, and it's truly so infuriating to me. I personally have never had to struggle with debilitating periods or heavy bleeding or cramping. I've been on the other side with irregular periods and missing periods. And I have worked with dozens of women who have dealt with that. And it is truly debilitating, truly. Missing school, being told that's normal, just take birth control or suck it up. It's all in your head. All your labs came back normal. There's nothing we can do. You're being dramatic. No, heavy periods and debilitating cramps are not normal. They are common. They are not normal. And if you've been told any of those things I just said, no, there is a solution for you. You are not being dramatic. It is not part of being a woman. It is not something that you're destined to struggle with. None of these things are. But this one, really, a lot of women get gaslit. And there's lots of things missed from this. Endometriosis, for example, like that is something that is really, really, we need to catch that and we need to deal with that. And if someone isn't being believed about how bad their cramping is, then that is not okay. Okay. I talked about heavy bleeding. So this would be like soaking through a tampon or a pad like every single hour, needing to change that, waking up and, bleeding through your sheets at night. Those are not normal. Missing periods, irregular periods, just wait it out is not going to bring your period back, folks. I'm recording an episode on this about how to get your period back after birth control. So that's probably going to air after this one or before it, but check that one out if this is something that you're dealing with. Acne, mood swings, bloating, fatigue that derail your life. Okay, totally normal to have some mood swings, totally normal to have some bloating here and there, totally normal to have those ebbs and flows in your energy. It's okay sometimes that you break out and have like a little pimple here or there, like around your cycle. We're not expecting perfection here. And if it's something where your acne is like really bad and you've been trying all the things and nothing's working, or it's not just around your cycle, or it is around your cycle, but it's like pretty severe, for example, mood swings and PMS, PMDD like symptoms where you're not you, you're not the same person. and you are just on edge all the time and every little thing sets you off. That's not normal. Bloating all the time or, looking pregnant when you're not, fatigue that makes you feel like you have to take 2-hour naps throughout the day, that, even if you're getting 8 and 9 hours of sleep, but you're still exhausted, that's not normal. Spotting in between your periods, bleeding in between your periods, if that happens occasionally, look into that. Okay. Am I more stressed? I would say that's the most common one. Stress, that's the same thing for like prolonged periods every once in a while, but it could be a sign of something deeper as well. PMS that feels like you're losing your mind, and then powering through. Feel like you have to just like power through and white knuckle your way through your period, or like your luteal phase and your menstrual phase. And this is again why I hope this reaches a lot of women, because even one of my clients, she sent me this influencer's Instagram. It's like a very popular, thousands of, if not like a million followers or something like that, like huge account on Instagram. And this woman is basically like talking about how horrible half of her month is, and how like she, during the last, or her luteal and her menstrual phase, like, she's having breakouts. She is PMSing so bad. She is dead to the world, can't do anything, like, and then all these women comment and they're like connecting on that, being like, yes, like this is me, like, yes, oh my gosh, I wish we never had periods, like, and I'm not saying it's their fault. I wish it wasn't a connection that we all had, of just talking about how bad our period is, and instead we could like normalize of like, I'm in my luteal phase and I'm more tired, like, or let's go out for ice cream, like we're both in our luteal phase, or, you know, I'm not going to hang out this week because I'm on my period, but like, let's get together in a couple weeks when I'm feeling more social. Like, I wish those were the conversations we were having to normalize the good parts of our period, versus it just being this like universal connection of like how awful periods are, because they shouldn't be that way. That's my whole shtick. And so, like I said, a lot of doctors, they aren't going to unfortunately listen to you. They've been taught this is just normal. They've been taught that the only solution is birth control, when in reality, there's so many other things that are root causes to period issues. I mentioned stress, under eating, poor diet, poor sleep, blood sugar swings, inflammation. Birth control masks these things sometimes, or it might make things kind of better, but it's still not addressing the root issue. And it could also cause other things down the road. So maybe you were put on birth control for acne or painful periods, but then you've been on it for 10 years and you start to develop anxiety and depression and mood issues. That's not a coincidence. I'm not saying that birth control is to blame for all of that, but there's lots of research showing the impacts of birth control on mental health, and literally changing your brain and decreasing your stress response. So, your ability to manage stress, and linking it to higher incidences of anxiety and depression in women, especially if you're put on birth control as a teenager, which think about the majority of us were. So we need to stop treating the symptoms, and we need to look deeper and get to the root cause of what's causing XYZ symptom to begin with. So to finish off to, why this matters, your period is, like I said, a monthly report card. It's really a deeper sign into how your health is. And I can guarantee you, if your period is in the not normal category, there's something underlying there that needs your attention. Your period is trying to get your attention and trying to tell you, hey, something needs support. I need help. Please help me. And besides it being a monthly report card, having a regular period also supports bone health, prevents osteoporosis because of that natural estrogen that your body produces. It impacts brain function, mood, metabolism, and also is important for heart health. So there are lots of long-term negative side effects of not ovulating, not having a real period, including increased risk of osteoporosis, heart disease, and burnout and other mental health conditions as well. So a healthy cycle is truly a reflection of a healthy you, and it shouldn't have to be awful. If you're listening to this episode and you're realizing your periods aren't normal, or you were put on birth control to quote unquote fix or manage symptoms like acne, mood swings, painful or missing periods, then I would really encourage you to check out my free Breakup with Birth Control masterclass. Even if you don't want to break up with birth control right now and you're just kind of in this information gathering, it's still really, really helpful to look at, to dive even deeper and to learn more. And so you can make an informed decision and just get to know your body more. So I share, it's just a little bit under 60 minutes, but I share the functional labs I run with clients to uncover hidden imbalances, real life case studies of women who I've worked with who have safely transitioned off of birth control without side effects and who have healed their hormones, whether it's like I share a case about, someone who cleared her acne while in the process of coming off birth control and she did not have post pill breakouts like she was scared of. I had a client who, healed her digestive system and her bloating and has less inflammation and just feels more like herself again and it feels better, less anxiety as well. And then I also have a case study too of a client who was not on birth control, but that was the only option provided to her, who had dealt with painful periods to the point where she'd pass out and vomit at work. And her mom dealt with that, her aunt dealt with that. And we were able to naturally heal her painful periods using this signature coaching method that I've developed over the years. So we'll talk all about those things and how I identify what doctors might have missed and create a personalized plan. You'll get a peek into their personalized plans as well, and really giving you insight and information on how to stop birth control without spiraling, whether it's now or in the future, or whether you just want to learn more about how to support your body on birth control. So it's completely free. I'll link it in the show notes. And if you're ready to stop feeling dismissed and feel strong and empowered, this will be a next best step for you, is to check that out. So hopefully you do. To finish off today's episode, I'm going to share an exciting life update. We officially booked our wedding venue. We are getting married in 2027 at the historic arcade in Cleveland, Ohio. If any of you are familiar with that, fun fact, it was also, if you've seen the new Superman movie, the last scene, because part of it was filmed in Cleveland, the last scene of Superman and Lois, when they're kissing and they fly in the air or whatever, that's actually in that building. So kind of cool, but that's not why we chose it. But it is such a pretty building. So we live in Ohio, or we live in Columbus, and I was very much wanting originally to get married in Columbus, just one, for logistical purposes, and two, we met here, we bought a house here. A lot of our friends are here. I feel like this is home. But Jared he's from Cleveland. He really wanted to look at places in Cleveland just to compare. So I was reluctantly, I agreed to. And we looked at three. And I was even telling my friends, I was like, unless I'm blown away by one in Cleveland, I really want this one in Columbus that we looked at. It was like a rooftop. It was also really pretty. And we went to the arcade and I was just like, I'm blown away. This is it. So we officially booked our date for 2027 and we put the down payment down, and it's really exciting. So we are slowly but surely moving forward in the wedding planning process, but this was the first big step, and we of course have some time. It's 2025 still, so we are slow movers with these things, but we have a lot of other life things going on. But it was a really cool thing to finally check off our to-do list and to find the perfect venue for us. All right, that's it for today's episode. If you liked this, please share with a friend. This is a great one to share with another female. I would love for everyone to share it with someone in their life, because I bet everyone knows someone who has a period that's not normal, but they just have kind of accepted it or been told it is normal and they're just going to deal with it until menopause. So please share it with someone who could use this information. My YouTube fam has grown lately, so would love for you to write a comment about what you've enjoyed about the episode or just say hi. I would love to connect with more of you guys. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and stay nourished, friends.